Hello, thank you for joining my presentation for the Emergency Home Learning and More Summit. I think I'm going to cover some emergency stuff and hopefully a little bit more. My name is Jason Caudill, and my presentation today is Big Tools at No Cost, Enhancing Online Learning with Open Source Software. And I'm an associate professor of business at King University. Our main campus is in Bristol, Tennessee. I'm on our branch campus in Knoxville, Tennessee. And as hard as things have been in education and for students with the pandemic over the past several months, it has somewhat brought me back to old habits and old research and old ideas. My PhD is in instructional technology, and one of my earliest research topics and some of the stuff I presented on way back in graduate school was open source software. And all of a sudden we're seeing kind of a resurgence in interest in things like open source and kind of really all things online learning. So hopefully what I can share today is going to be helpful for you, whether you're a parent with kids that are in school, whether you're an online student yourself at whatever level, or if you're an administrator at an institution and you're looking for answers for how your institution can provide a better learning environment for families and students. I think any of you are going to be able to get some things out of this presentation today. So I always like to start a discussion with, why are we here? What's the point? So why are we talking software? I think all of us understand that in online education, you have to have good course design and instruction. That has to be there. Good work means the student has to put forth effort. They have to be engaged in working hard with that quality learning environment you've designed online with the proper pedagogies and layouts and formats and attention to the course and all those things that go along with online instruction. But good work, if you have all of those things, you can be successful. It's much more achievable if you've got good tools. And I think we all understand when you're learning online, that primary tool that you have to use is software. The problem is software can be very expensive. And expense generally means limited access. There are limits to what a school district or a university or an individual private school can afford to purchase and distribute and utilize. There are limits on what families can afford. And in our current situation, there are a lot of families that are really stretching their budget to pay for internet access to give their kids online learning opportunities. Adding software on top of that is just more than a lot of people can do. So expense is a big problem. Open source addresses that in a lot of different ways. That expense goes up if you're an institution trying to do this in a distributed environment. Not only are you dealing with the purchase of licenses, but when you're trying to manage a distributed computing environment, you're looking at lots of administrative costs. So you've got the cost of the software licenses, but then you've also got to install everything. You've got to offer maintenance. You've got to offer technical support. You've got to keep versions updated. There's all these things that make it much more expensive. If you're in a bring your own device kind of environment, not only are you trying to distribute software, but you're supporting multiple systems. You may have some on Windows machines, some on Apple machines. You may have some Linux users out there. It just gets very expensive for an organization to manage distributed software. So open source can offer an opportunity to get away from that as well. So we're looking at free solutions, but here's the key. The key to all of this that makes it worth the discussion. We're looking at free solutions with good quality. Free tools that are bad at what they do, they're not going to help. We're looking at free solutions that are quality solutions. You put those two things together, you've got solutions to your problems. So what is open source software? I'm not going to read the description to you here. This definition's from opensource.com. It's a major online site on the topic. Basically, open source software, it's software that an individual or a group of people have come together. They've written it, they've put it online, they're sharing it for free with the world so that people can use it and benefit from it. Now, generally, we'll get into this a little bit later, you've also got a user community out there that once a piece of software gets popular, that community starts contributing to the software. So you have really potentially the whole world, worldwide access and worldwide involvement in making this free software the best piece of software it can be. So that is open source. That's the stuff we're talking about today. That's where it comes from and how it operates. So, important things about open source. Free is always at the top of everybody's list for some reason. I've got the note there, other things matter more. The free really does matter, and we've talked about the cost issues and obstacles that brings, but just free is not enough to make something good. Everything I talk about today and much of the open source community is cross-platform compatible, meaning most of these programs, they're going to be compatible with Windows, Mac, and Linux operating systems on computers. You're seeing increasing flexibility where they're also offering Android and iOS mobile platforms as an option. That's still a growing thing. Some software, it makes more sense than others. But everything I talk about today is available on Windows, Mac, and Linux. So all of the major laptop, desktop operating systems, these softwares I talk about today are going to be available to those. We've got really robust user communities. That's where the improvement comes. Bug fixes, plugins, extensions, updates, ideas for how to make the next version better. That's driven by a user community. And the more popular a platform is, the more robust the user community will be. The stuff we're talking about today is the major players in open source, and they've got huge user communities that not only do they make the software better, but there are forums you can get on, just type, hey, I'm trying to do this with this program. Can somebody help? And you'll get answers. Usually faster, more effective answers than you get when you do the same thing with commercial platforms. Most of these will work and be compatible with commercial file formats. And that's important. If, just as an example, you're using an open source Office suite and your school uses Microsoft, well, an open source application that's compatible with Microsoft Office, it will be able to open and use the Office files that your school sends. It will also give you the option to save in Office format so that when you send that file back as a completed assignment or something else, the people using Microsoft Office, it's invisible to them. It's a Microsoft Office file. It opens and runs and functions just like a Microsoft Office file. That commercial file format compatibility, very helpful when you're dealing with multiple instructors, multiple classes. You want to work in their format so it's easy for them. It's accessible to anybody with a computer and a network connection. Obviously, there are some limits to that, but if you're learning online, you've got a computer and a network connection. Otherwise, you can't be online. So this is absolutely available to online learners. And if you're an institution, you can curate and distribute open source software. You can just share the links. Hey, we recommend this set of software. Go download it and install it. So you don't have to send the stuff out. You don't have to configure the machines for people. Give them the links. Let them download what they need. So to implement it, and this is more the institutional side, but needs assessment is the first thing you do. What do we need? Once we know what we need, what's the right software package to fill that need? When you're looking at open source solutions, you want to find current releases. You want active user communities. I've touched on how important that is. and file format compatibility. If those three things are present for an open source solution, it's probably going to be a pretty good one. Past that, you get into testing it and seeing how user-friendly is it, does it have the right feature set, things like that. But those three broad pieces, those are critical. Keep your links active to the current versions, and then you can share it however you want to. Website, through the LMS, your learning management system. Send it out via email, post it on your Instagram feed. Whatever works to communicate with people that are out there and need the software, you can run it like that. Now, sometime in the last few minutes, somebody has asked the question out there, but we can do this with cloud applications. Why do we need open source? I'm a big fan of cloud apps, and the solutions are great. If you're dealing with limited bandwidth, they can be an issue. Where you can download over time and then use something local, bandwidth is less of a problem. Generally, you do still have some functionality limits with cloud solutions. And for the most part, the cloud option for a particular piece of software is not as robust as the locally installed, download and install it to your computer version. The more complex things are, generally the more it's worthwhile to use something local versus a cloud application. So absolutely use cloud tools. Get in there and do that. Just be deliberate in how you use them and where. Make sure it's the right fit. Now, for why I think everybody's probably here, we're going to talk some open source software recommendations. What are some of the tools that are out there that we can use and be effective with? I think Office apps are probably at the top of everybody's list. That's if you're not online in a browser, you're probably in an Office application of some sort when you're learning online. LibreOffice by a company called the Document Foundation, the leading open source Office suite right now. Windows, Mac, Linux, Android, and iOS. It goes on basically every platform out there. And it's got the full list of Office applications: Writer, Calc, Impress, Draw, Base, Math, and Charts. That's basically your word processor, spreadsheet, database, a graphics program, a spreadsheet program, things like that, presentations. It's got what's called OOXML export. All that means is it's compatible with Microsoft Office. So you can open, use, and export as a docx, PPTX, XMLX, those kinds of file formats that are compatible with Office work with this program. For anybody that's been in this for a while and you remember OpenOffice, that was kind of the first big open source hit that everybody in IT knew about. LibreOffice is the successor to OpenOffice. So if you're still on OpenOffice, take a look at Libre and see about the upgrade. For browsers, there are a lot of open source browsers out there. Personally, I've been on Firefox for years and years. I've got an account saved where I can log in. My bookmarks are all there, my plugins, and all that good stuff. Windows, Mac, Linux, Android, iOS, it'll go on everything. There is a good security focus on Firefox. Huge, because they've been around so long, they've been a huge selection of extensions and plugins and all kinds of things you can do with the browser. Another one that is popping up on recommended lists for software options is Brave. And again, all platforms. Security, privacy, and speed are the primary focuses of this browser. They do still provide extension options. So that's another one to look at. There are others, and none of these discussions I'm having today are to say, hey, this is the absolute best, use this, don't use others. I'm hitting the high points of the most popular platforms, but there's plenty of stuff out there, so feel free to explore and see what works for you. Email and calendar, Mozilla Thunderbird is really the old kind of still king of that kind of application. Pairs nicely with Firefox. It's all the Mozilla Foundation. Cross-platform. You can run multiple email accounts. So if you've got work and school and personal, you can load and run multiple email accounts off the client. Great calendar functionality. You can get RSS feeds if you're using those. Lots of extensions and plugins again for Thunderbird, just like there are the browsers. So that's a really good, if you're looking for an alternative to Outlook, or if you're not on a Microsoft platform, this is a really good open source extension. Now for graphics, and I think we know, depending on the level of school you're talking about, a lot of assignments come with, hey, make a chart, use a picture, do something like that. This is a good selection of graphical programs. GIMP, the GNU Image Manipulation Program, is essentially an open source version of Photoshop. A different interface, a different look, but it has the major functionalities of a good high quality image editor. Windows, Mac, and Linux, lots and lots of add-ons and plugins available. So if you're wanting to do something that it doesn't do, get online and search GIMP extension 4 and type in what you want to do. There's a good chance there's an extension out there that you can just download and install for free. It'll do basic stuff. It also moves all the way up to professional grade image editing and image creation. You can draw with this and create your own images. I'm a big time GIMP user. I just actually finished doing some photo editing and having stuff printed from a family vacation. So that's one I use all the time. Lucidchart is a diagramming software. And you may be looking at this and flowcharts, process maps, why do I need this for school? It also translates really well to doing things like timelines, for doing relational diagrams of how things connect to each other. So this is a good educational piece of software. If you're getting into the more advanced, more complex stuff, Inkscape is a vector graphics software. And when you create things in vector graphics, they essentially are scalable without distortion, which is a big deal if you're doing professional grade stuff. So if you're working with an art class or graphic design or something that's a higher level as an online course, Inkscape is a really, really good option for that. Okay, screencasting. I'm going to be perfectly honest here. I do a lot of screencasts for work and conferences now that everything is virtual like we are today. I've spent the money. I have a commercial application for my screencasting because the functionality for me is worth that investment because of the volume I do. If you're going to do one every so often, or if you need one for maybe just one assignment in one class, the open source options are completely functional. OBS Studio seems to be the leading candidate right now for screencasting applications that are open source. It is Windows, Mac, and Linux. So if you need to use one of these, give this one a shot. There's others out there, so like everything else, be sure and browse, look, research, try a couple out, see what you like. But this is a really good option for you. For video, and there are basic video editors included with most operating systems today. If you want a little bit more than that, Shotcut is the leading option for open source right now, cross-platform, works with the vast majority of file formats. So however you've shot your video, you're probably going to be okay. It's 4K compatible. So if you've got a really good high-quality video camera that's recording in 4K, Shotcut can work with 4K. So if you got to make a movie for class, if you're doing some animation, things like that, Shotcut's a pretty good solution for you to work on there. And finally, this is a little bit outside what we're talking about specifically today, but because it's related, I wanted to take the time and remind everybody that it's not just open source software that's out there. We've got open source learning content. So software is great, but that open source movement has grown to capture all kinds of different things. So if you're needing to expand on the content that's in your online lesson, or if you're needing tutoring support, some step-by-step, here's how you work this kind of problem, here's how this particular science concept works, explanations of how things work. Get out and look for open source learning content to supplement that online course. Khan Academy is really sort of the granddaddy of this. They have got tons and tons of really high quality information. I've got YouTube at the bottom of this list because there is all kinds of really good content on YouTube for open source learning. A lot of Khan Academy stuff is also on YouTube. So there's kind of some intersections there of the different platforms, but Khan Academy has got just, everything imaginable, from elementary school math up to college level accounting and finance. I've used Khan Academy stuff with my undergraduate students and embedded that in my online courses because they cover stuff that we're doing at the college level. Coursera is, in some senses, a paid platform. If you want to get a credentialed outcome, if you want certified and all these things, you have to pay for courses. But the vast majority of the content itself is free. And they've got everything from like high school math up to graduate level physics and everything in between. So if you're looking for extra content, you do not have to go through the certification process to access the content on Coursera. Get on there, look around. If there's content you want, go ahead and access it. If you want to pay for a credential, that's great. If you don't, just use the content. That's part of why they're there. And then open educational resources. This is a movement where textbooks, course material, presentations, sample assignments, all kinds of things are being posted online. So if you're looking for supplemental materials, or if you're an institution looking for materials to post with a class, do a search for open educational resource and then your subject matter, your specific topic. And there's a lot out there. I'm using a couple of OER textbooks in classes that I teach, and it's good, high-quality material, developed, written, distributed by established scholars in their fields. And there is more. These are kind of the big ones to touch on as far as open source learning. But remember that content is out there, and don't get stuck focusing on only software. Make sure you get the learning content too. So if I need something else, we are just hitting the high points here. If you need something, go search for it. SourceForge.net is the home on the internet for this stuff. There are other sites as well, but SourceForge is where you're going to find the most. Go on SourceForge, type in a search for whatever kind of software you need, and see what pops up. Install it, check it out, see if it works for you. If it doesn't, try another solution. Get on, do a broad internet search. Open source solution for, type in what you need. All of that can work. Don't be shy about getting out and exploring and just downloading stuff and seeing if it works. That's part of what it's for, is for people to download and try. So some resources here. I've got some lists of open source solutions to things. SourceForge is on there, of course. There's also an open source e-learning solution there that if you're an institution, that's got some more elements of things that you're going to use at the institutional level, things like open source learning management systems and stuff that's on the institutional level rather than the personal user level. And please feel free to follow up with me. My LinkedIn profile link is there at the bottom of the page. Please don't hesitate to connect with me after the conference. Message me, ask questions. If you're out there, you're doing research and you've got a project going on, I'd love to hear what you're doing. Maybe we can partner and do some stuff together. I'm open to whatever kind of inquiries are out there. I always welcome a conversation. So please connect with me, follow up, look forward to some conversations after the presentation. And thank you, everyone, for joining me today. Hope everybody enjoys the rest of the conference.